History holds secrets that refuse to stay buried. We are about to journey through 25 of the world's most debated paranormal events, stories of ghosts, curses, and phenomena that defy all logic. By the end, you will possess a deeper understanding of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. We will explore why a ship was found sailing with no crew, and what caused hundreds of people to dance uncontrollably until they died. Which of these historical puzzles do you believe could have a supernatural explanation? A home in a quiet London neighborhood became the epicenter of one of the most terrifying paranormal cases in modern history. In 1977, the Hodgson family began experiencing events that defied all rational explanation. It started with knocking sounds from the walls and small objects shifting from their places. But the disturbances quickly escalated into something far more aggressive. Furniture would slide across the room with no one touching it. The two young daughters, Janet and Margaret, were reportedly levitated from their beds, their bodies rising into the air as if lifted by invisible hands. The most chilling aspect, however, was the voice. A low, gruff, and disembodied voice would emanate from 11-year-old Janet, speaking words that a child would not know and making threats that froze the blood of everyone who heard it. The chaos prompted an investigation by the Society for Psychical Research. Two men, Maurice Grosse and Guy Lyon Playfair, dedicated themselves to documenting the phenomena. They spent months in the house gathering what they considered to be compelling evidence. They captured audio recordings of the raspy voice and took photographs they claimed showed objects in mid-flight. The investigators became convinced they were dealing with a genuine poltergeist, a disruptive spirit focusing its energy on a young adolescent in the home. Yet, from the very beginning, skeptics offered a different explanation. They suggested the events were an elaborate hoax perpetrated by the children, pointing to instances where the girls were allegedly caught faking some of the activity. This conflict between belief and skepticism is precisely why the Enfield case remains a cornerstone of paranormal lore. It presents a haunting portrait of a family trapped in their own home, a place transformed from a sanctuary into a theater of the inexplicable, leaving us to wonder where the line between childhood imagination and genuine supernatural force truly lies. Just 1 year before the Enfield case began, another family was reportedly driven from their home by forces they could not comprehend. In December 1975, George and Kathleen Lutz moved into their dream house in Amityville, New York, with their 3 children. They knew the home's grim history. Only 13 months earlier, a young man named Ronald Defy Jr. had murdered his entire family there, 6 people, in the dead of night. The Lutzes had the house blessed and moved in, hoping to start a new chapter. Their stay lasted a mere 28 days. What they claimed happened inside became the foundation for one of the most famous and fiercely debated hauntings of all time. They described a relentless onslaught of paranormal activity. Swarms of flies would materialize in closed rooms despite it being the dead of winter. A sickly green slime oozed from the keyholes and walls. Cold spots would freeze the air in certain hallways, and family members would be violently thrown from their beds. The most bizarre claim was the appearance of a demonic, pig-like entity they named Jody, whose glowing red eyes would watch them from the darkness outside their windows. The psychological torment was immense. Kathleen reported waking up to find her physical appearance altered, her body looking decades older. George was drawn to spend hours by the boathouse, consumed by a strange compulsion, and he began to resemble a previous occupant of the house, the murderer Ronald Defy himself. Fleeing with only the clothes on their backs, they left everything behind. Their story was an immediate media sensation. It was captured in a best-selling book that sold millions of copies, followed by a blockbuster film that seared the image of the distinctive quarter-moon windows into the public's imagination. The case, however, is a battlefield of conflicting testimony. believers point to the testimony of friends and a priest who visited the home, corroborating some of the strange occurrences. They ask how an entire family could invent such a complex and terrifying story. Skeptics, however, present a compelling counter-argument. They highlight the significant financial profit the Lutzes made from their story. Some investigators suggest the entire episode was a carefully crafted hoax, possibly born from the powerful suggestion of the house's violent past, amplified by the family's own fear and the growing pressure from media attention. The Amityville Horror forces us to question the very nature of evidence. Can a story, repeated and embellished through books and films, ever be separated from the truth? Or does it become its own kind of reality, a modern legend that continues to haunt us regardless of its origins? Long before Amityville and Enfield, a different kind of entity was making its mark on the American frontier. In the rural community of Adams, Tennessee, the Bell family became the focus of a haunting so intense it would become a foundational American legend. It began in 1817 with simple, unnerving sounds, knocking on the walls and doors of their farmhouse. But this was no ordinary spirit. The phenomena rapidly escalated into something with a voice and a personality. It identified itself as the ghost of a local woman named Kate Batts, a neighbor with whom John Bell had a disputed land deal, and from that moment the Bell Witch was born. This entity was not merely a disruptive force, it was a conversationalist. It would hold long, intelligent dialogues with the family and their visitors, often offering shocking insights into distant events or reciting scripture with perfect clarity. Its behavior, however, was violently contradictory. It could sing beautiful hymns one moment and the next, it would unleash a torrent of physical abuse, particularly targeting John Bell and his youngest daughter, Betsy. The witch was known to pull their hair, slap their faces, and even pinch them until dark bruises appeared. The entity's fame grew to such an extent that it attracted a most distinguished investigator, the famous military leader and future president, Andrew Jackson. According to legend, Jackson and his men were traveling to the Bell farm when their wagon suddenly stopped dead, its wheels refusing to turn. Jackson himself is said to have proclaimed, "By the eternal, boys, it is the witch." Upon arriving at the house, one of his companions, a man who claimed to be a witch hunter, found himself attacked by invisible hands and fled into the night, screaming in terror. The torment culminated in the death of John Bell. He fell mysteriously ill, suffering from seizures and a strange paralysis. The witch openly boasted that it was poisoning him, and indeed, a small vial of unknown black liquid was found, a single drop of which caused a family cat to convulse and die. After John Bell passed away, the entity declared its work finished and largely disappeared, though it promised to return in 7 years, a promise it reportedly kept with a brief final visit. So, was this a true paranormal siege? The case is remarkably well documented through eyewitness accounts and later publications, lending it a credibility that simpler ghost stories lack. The sheer duration of the haunting, its intelligence, and the high-profile witnesses all argue for something extraordinary. Yet, skeptics have proposed rational explanations for centuries. Some historians suggest it was an elaborate, long-running hoax perpetrated by a neighboring family seeking revenge, or even by someone within the Bell household itself. Others point to the possibility of mass hysteria, a collective psychological unraveling fueled by the superstitions of the time and the intense focus on the family. The Bell Witch haunting forces a difficult question. Could a community in the early 19th century have sustained a collective delusion for 4 long years, complete with physical effects and intelligent conversation? Or does this story from the Tennessee wilderness stand as one of history's most compelling accounts of a truly intelligent and malevolent presence? While families in their homes faced unseen torment, an entire wilderness in Siberia was struck by a force of unimaginable power. On the morning of June 30th, 1908, a colossal explosion ripped through the remote Tunguska River basin. The blast flattened an estimated 2,000 square kilometers of forest, snapping millions of ancient trees like twigs and laying them out in a radial pattern of destruction. The event was so immense that its shockwaves were recorded circling the globe not once but twice. Seismographs as far away as England detected the tremor, and the sound was audible for over 1,000 kilometers. In the days that followed, the night skies across Europe and Asia glowed with an unearthly, silvery light, so bright that people could read newspapers outdoors at midnight. For years, the sheer remoteness of the location prevented a proper investigation. It was not until 1927 that the first scientific expedition, led by Leonid Kulik, reached the epicenter. He expected to find a massive crater and the remains of a giant meteorite. To his astonishment, he found neither. There was no crater, only the vast, surreal landscape of fallen trees, all pointing away from a central point. This absence of a smoking gun became the core of the enduring mystery. The leading scientific explanation is an airburst. The theory suggests a stony meteoroid or a fragment of a comet, roughly the size of a large building, entered Earth's atmosphere at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour. It superheated the air around it, creating a fireball brighter than the sun, and then detonated several kilometers above the ground. The resulting blast, estimated to be 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima, unleashed a scorching thermal pulse and a hurricane-force shockwave that did all the damage without ever touching the Earth. This theory elegantly explains the lack of a crater and the pattern of the devastation. Yet, the absence of any definitive physical evidence, like a large meteorite fragment, has left the door open for more extraordinary ideas. Some have proposed that an alien spacecraft suffered a catastrophic engine failure and exploded in the atmosphere. Others point to the brilliant inventor Nikola Tesla, suggesting he was testing a powerful wireless energy transmission device, and the Tunguska event was the terrifying result of an experiment gone wrong. For decades, scientific expeditions have combed the swampy, isolated terrain, searching for clues in the soil and in the rings of the few surviving trees. They have found microscopic glass spheres and elevated levels of certain elements, which support the extraterrestrial impact theory, but a definitive piece of the object itself has never been recovered. This void of absolute proof is what fuels the debate. Is Tunguska a stark reminder of our planet's vulnerability to celestial threats, or does it conceal a secret far stranger than a simple rock from space? While Siberia was reeling from a celestial blast, a very different kind of force was being unearthed in the sands of Egypt. The legend of the Pharaoh's curse is a story woven from gold, ambition, and a string of deaths that defied easy explanation. It all began with one of the greatest archaeological discoveries in history. In November 1922, after years of fruitless searching, British archaeologist Howard Carter finally broke through a sealed doorway into the untouched tomb of the boy King Tutankhamun. The treasures within were beyond imagination, but as the world marveled, a shadow fell over the triumphant expedition. The financial backer of the entire venture, Lord Carnarvon, was the curse's first and most famous victim. Just a few months after the tomb's official opening, he died in Cairo from blood poisoning, the result of a seemingly trivial mosquito bite that became infected after he nicked it while shaving. The coincidence was staggering. At the precise moment of his death back in England, the lights in Carnarvon's home reportedly flickered and went out. His dog, Susie, let out a single howl and dropped dead. The newspapers, hungry for a sensational story, seized upon these details. They printed stories of a curse inscribed on the tomb's entrance, a chilling warning that death would come on swift wings to those who disturbed the pharaoh's eternal rest. In reality, no such specific inscription was found at the entrance, though a clay brick discovered in an annex did bear a protective spell warning of a chaotic death for any trespasser. The media had its narrative and the legend took flight. one by one, others connected to the excavation met untimely ends. George J. Good, a wealthy American financier who visited the tomb, died of pneumonia shortly after. Carter's personal secretary, Richard Bethel, was found dead in his bed from an apparent heart attack at the age of 45. His father, Lord Westbury, reportedly distraught over his son's death, threw himself from his 7th-floor London apartment. Even Archibald Douglas Reed, the radiologist who X-rayed the mummy before it was placed back in its sarcophagus, died mysteriously after returning to England. To the public, it seemed an invisible scythe was cutting down all those associated with the desecration of the sacred tomb. Skeptics, however, were quick to point out the flaws in this terrifying story. Howard Carter, the man who should have been the curse's primary target, lived for another 17 years, dying of natural causes at the age of 64. Most of the people present at the tomb's opening lived long, full lives. Statistically, the death rate among the excavation team was not unusually high for the time. Scientists have since proposed rational, if still unsettling, explanations. The tomb had been sealed for over 3,000 years. Inside, researchers theorized that potentially toxic molds and bacteria, perhaps ancient spores of Aspergillus, could have thrived in the dark, sealed environment. When the tomb was opened, these microorganisms were released, posing a serious threat to anyone with a compromised immune system, much like Lord Carnarvon, who was in poor health. Another theory suggests that the ancient Egyptians may have even booby-trapped the tomb with poisonous substances placed on the artifacts and within the sealed containers. So does science finally lay the curse to rest? Perhaps not entirely. The power of the curse narrative lies not in statistics, but in the unsettling pattern of it all. The timing of Lord Carnarvon's death, the strange stories of electrical failures, and the series of unfortunate events that followed created a story too compelling to be forgotten. It speaks to a deep, almost primal fear that some places are meant to remain sealed, and that the past has a way of reaching out to punish those who dare to rob it of its secrets. 2 years after the Tunguska event baffled scientists, a very different kind of object fell from the skies over the American Southwest. In the summer of 1947, something crashed on a remote ranch near Roswell, New Mexico. Rancher Mac Brazel was the first to discover the wreckage, a field littered with strange metallic debris. He described fragments of a lightweight, foil-like material that refused to burn, along with beams of a dark, wood-like substance that were impossibly strong and could not be cut or scratched. Puzzled, he reported his find to the local sheriff, who then contacted the nearby Roswell Army airfield. The military's initial response was swift and stunning. A press release issued by the base on July 8th announced the recovery of a crashed flying disc. The news immediately captured the nation's attention, only to be dramatically retracted just 1 day later. The official story was now that the wreckage was merely a conventional weather balloon. The incident was quickly forgotten by the wider public for decades, but the seed of a monumental mystery had been planted. That seed would sprout into a towering tree of speculation in the 1970s and 80s, when former military personnel and other witnesses began to come forward with explosive new accounts. They spoke not just of strange wreckage, but of a second, more secret crash site where a damaged, disc-shaped craft and its non-human occupants had been recovered. These witnesses described seeing small, humanoid bodies with large heads and oversized eyes. Their remains swiftly gathered and transported away by military officials who enforced a strict code of silence. These delayed testimonies transformed the Roswell incident from a curious footnote into the foundation of modern UFO lore and the centerpiece of conspiracy theories alleging a massive governmental cover-up. In response to growing public pressure, the United States Air Force launched 2 separate official investigations, decades after the fact. Their first report, released in 1994, concluded that the debris recovered in 1947 was not from a weather balloon, but from a then top secret array of high-altitude balloons and radar reflectors known as Project Mogul. This project was designed to monitor the atmosphere for sound waves from Soviet nuclear tests, a vital and highly classified Cold War program that explained the initial secrecy and confusion. A second report in 1997 addressed the alien bodies, dismissing them as misremembered accounts of military crash test dummies that were dropped in the desert during the 1950s. For believers, these official explanations only deepened the suspicion. They argue that the Project Mogul story is a flimsy, convenient excuse, and that the crash test dummies timeline does not match the eyewitness accounts from 1947. Why would the military be so heavy-handed with secrecy over a simple balloon, even a classified one? Why did the original story change so abruptly? The Roswell incident endures not because of any single piece of irrefutable evidence, but because of its powerful, enduring symbolism. It represents the ultimate question of what our governments might truly know about the unknown, and whether we can ever trust the official story when the truth is hidden behind layers of national security and decades of silence. The sea has always held its secrets, but few ships have surrendered a mystery as complete and chilling as the Mary Celeste. In December 1872, the merchant brigantine was spotted adrift in the calm Atlantic by the crew of the day Gracia. She was sailing herself, her sails partially set and billowing gently in the breeze. Captain David Morehouse of the day Gracia knew this was wrong. He sent a boarding party to investigate. What they found was a scene of profound and eerie normalcy frozen in time. A breakfast meal was still on the table in the galley, as if the crew had just stepped away moments before. The personal belongings of the 10 people who had been aboard were all in their places, completely untouched. There was no sign of a struggle, no damage to the ship, and no leaks. The cargo of industrial alcohol was largely intact, yet the single lifeboat was gone. The captain, his family, and the entire crew had simply vanished without a trace. How does an entire group of experienced mariners abandon a perfectly sound vessel in the middle of the ocean, never to be seen again? The logical theories began almost immediately. Perhaps they were attacked by pirates, but nothing was stolen. A sudden waterspout or a minor seaquake might have panicked them into believing the ship was sinking, leading to a disastrous decision to take to the lifeboat, only to be lost at sea. Another suggestion points to the cargo. The alcohol could have leaked, filling the hold with fumes. Fearing an explosion, the crew might have evacuated in a frantic hurry, but then watched from their small boat as the explosion never came, leaving them stranded. Some have even proposed an attack by a giant squid, a creature of legend, though there was no evidence of such a violent encounter. The Mary Celeste story was later, and quite inaccurately, woven into the lore of the Bermuda Triangle, even though she was found far to the east near the Azores. This fictional link only added a layer of supernatural speculation to a case that needs no embellishment. The true power of the mystery lies in its stark emptiness. There is no monster, no curse, no obvious villain. Only a ship in perfect condition, a table set for a meal, and the vast, silent ocean holding its answer forever. While the Mary Celeste presented a mystery of absence, the city of Strasbourg witnessed a terrifying spectacle of uncontrollable presence. In July 1518, a woman named Frau Trophia stepped into a narrow street and began to dance. This was not a dance of joy, but a frantic, desperate, and relentless convulsion of her body. She could not stop. For days she danced, her feet bleeding, her body pushed beyond its limits. Within a week, the strange compulsion had spread. Dozens, and then hundreds of her neighbors joined her in this macabre marathon. The city squares became stages for a living nightmare, filled with people jerking, leaping, and twirling without rhythm or reason. Authorities, baffled and desperate, initially believed the dancers needed to dance the fever out of their systems. They built a special stage, hired musicians, and encouraged the madness, hoping it would run its course. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. The dancers did not stop. They danced through scorching summer days and into the night, their movements a grotesque pantomime of celebration twisted into torment. The human body could not endure such an ordeal. Many dancers collapsed from sheer exhaustion. Others suffered fatal heart attacks or strokes. Historical records suggest that at the peak of the plague, as many as 15 people were dying each day, their bodies broken by a force they could not comprehend. So what could cause such a bizarre and lethal phenomenon? Modern science points to two primary theories. The first is mass psychogenic illness, a form of mass hysteria where the intense stress and anxiety of the time, perhaps fueled by famine, disease, and profound social uncertainty, manifested in a shared physical symptom. In this case, the symptom was an irresistible urge to dance. Seeing one person succumb created a powerful psychological contagion, a feedback loop of fear and imitation that spread through the susceptible population. The second theory involves a physical cause, ergot poisoning. Ergot is a fungus that grows on damp rye, a staple grain in the region. When consumed, it can cause severe muscle spasms, convulsions, hallucinations, and a burning sensation in the limbs, symptoms that could easily be interpreted as a frantic, involuntary dance. This theory offers a tangible, biological explanation for the initial compulsion that then sparked a wider social hysteria. Yet, for the people of 1518, such scientific concepts did not exist. They saw the event through a lens of superstition and faith. Many believed the dancers were victims of demonic possession or were struck by a curse from Saint Vitus, a saint invoked against neurological disorders who was now seemingly punishing them. The dancing plague remains one of history's most unsettling puzzles because it lives at the intersection of the body and the mind, the individual and the crowd. Was it a poison in the bread, a sickness of the soul, or something else entirely? It forces us to ask how easily our reality can unravel and how quickly a single strange step can lead an entire community into a fatal dance. A winged silhouette against a cold West Virginia sky marked the beginning of an ominous modern legend. Between 1966 and 1967, the small town of Point Pleasant became the stage for a series of bizarre encounters with a creature unlike any other. Witnesses described a towering, man-sized figure with massive wings folded against its back and piercing, glowing red eyes set into its chest. It was a thing of nightmares, seemingly composed of shadow and malevolent energy. The terror reached a fever pitch one November night when two young couples, driving near a former World War II munitions site known as the TNT area, claimed the creature pursued their car at impossible speeds, keeping pace with them as they raced toward the city limits in sheer panic. This was not an isolated sighting. Over 13 months, dozens of residents reported similar encounters, each account adding another chilling detail to the entity that journalist John Keel would famously dub the Mothman. Keel's investigation wove the creature into a much wider and stranger tapestry. He connected the sightings to reports of unexplained lights in the sky, eerie phone calls from mysterious voices, and visits from the so-called men in black, strange figures in dark suits who would intimidate witnesses into silence. For Keel, the Mothman was not merely a monster, it was a paranormal omen, a piece of a larger, more incomprehensible puzzle. Then, on December 15, 1967, at the peak of the evening rush hour, the silver bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed into the icy waters of the Ohio River. 46 people lost their lives in the catastrophic failure. The timing felt too significant to ignore. The Mothman sightings ceased almost immediately after the disaster, leading many to believe the creature had not been a threat itself, but a terrifying harbinger of the doom to come. This powerful narrative that the entity was a prophet of tragedy cemented the legend in popular culture. Skeptics, of course, offer more grounded explanations. The most common theory suggests a case of mistaken identity. The large sandhill crane, a bird native to the region with a wingspan that can exceed 2 meters and a red patch of skin around its eyes, could easily be misidentified, especially in poor light conditions by a startled observer. Others point to the psychological impact of the area itself. The TNT zone, with its abandoned, eerie bunkers, was a local spot for teenage gatherings, a place already ripe for fear and suggestion. Could the power of urban legend and mass hysteria have conjured the Mothman from the collective anxiety of a small town? Yet, for those who saw it, no explanation of cranes or hysteria has ever been sufficient. They insist what they encountered was solid, real, and imbued with a palpable sense of dread. The Mothman's enduring legacy is a testament to the human need to find pattern and meaning in tragedy, to give a face to impending disaster, even if that face has glowing red eyes and vast dark wings. Fear can transform a community into a courtroom of suspicion. In the stark Puritan settlement of Salem, Massachusetts, the year 1692 began with whispers that spiraled into a deadly panic. It started in the household of the local minister, Samuel Parris. His daughter, Betty, and his niece, Abigail Williams, began suffering from violent, unexplained fits. They contorted their bodies, uttered strange sounds, and complained of being pinched and pricked by invisible forces. The local doctor, finding no physical ailment, delivered a terrifying diagnosis. The girls were under the influence of witchcraft. Pressured to name their tormentors, the girls accused 3 women, Tituba, the Parris family's enslaved Caribbean woman, Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, and Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who rarely attended church. This was the spark that ignited an inferno. The accusations multiplied rapidly, moving from the marginalized to upstanding members of the community. The legal proceedings that followed were a travesty of justice. The court allowed the use of spectral evidence, a concept where the accuser's claim of being attacked by the defendant's invisible spirit was accepted as proof. The accused faced an impossible choice. If they confessed to witchcraft, they might save their lives but be socially ruined. If they maintained their innocence, they were condemned. 20 people were executed, 19 by hanging, and one man, Giles Corey, was pressed to death under heavy stones for refusing to enter a plea. So what caused the young girls to convulse and point fingers? Modern scientists have searched for a biological trigger. The ergot poisoning theory suggests a fungus on the village rye grain could have produced convulsions and hallucinations mirroring the girls' symptoms. Others have proposed an outbreak of encephalitis, a brain inflammation that can cause seizures and bizarre behavior. Psychologists point to conversion disorder, where intense psychological stress manifests as physical symptoms, a powerful phenomenon in a repressive society gripped by fear of the devil. The Salem witch trials stand as a permanent stain on American history, a chilling lesson in how superstition and mass hysteria can unravel the very fabric of law and neighborly trust. The echoes of those accusations remind us how quickly reason can fall when fear takes the stand. Deep within the vaults of Yale University lies a book that has defied understanding for centuries. The Voynich manuscript is a paradox, a beautifully crafted volume from the early 15th century that is completely unreadable. Its pages are filled with elegant, flowing script in an alphabet that matches no known language on Earth. Alongside the text are breathtakingly strange illustrations, a gallery of the impossible. There are delicate drawings of plants that have never been identified, with roots and leaves that defy botanical classification. Intricate astronomical charts show celestial formations that do not match our night sky. Perhaps most curiously, there are detailed scenes of tiny, nude women bathing in and connecting with tubes of a vibrant emerald green liquid, a process whose purpose is utterly mystifying. This book is a locked door for which no one has found the key. The best cryptographic minds of the 20th century, including codebreakers who cracked enemy ciphers during the Second World War, have turned their formidable skills to the Voynich only to be utterly defeated. Computers running complex algorithms have analyzed the text's patterns, confirming it has a structure consistent with a real language, yet its meaning remains just out of reach. So what is it? Some scholars have argued it is an elaborate and expensive hoax created to dupe a wealthy medieval patron, a meaningless collection of symbols designed to look profound. Others believe it is a genuine treatise on a lost form of alchemy or medicine, its green baths representing a spiritual or chemical process we no longer comprehend. More speculative theories suggest it is the sole surviving document of a vanished culture, or even knowledge imparted by visitors from another world. The manuscript's silence is its most powerful voice. It sits as a tangible reminder that the past can hold secrets so deep that even our most advanced technology cannot pry them loose. It challenges our assumption that we can decipher all of history's puzzles, presenting us with a beautiful, frustrating, and utterly silent enigma. While ancient books and monsters capture our imagination, a more subtle mystery hums just below the surface of everyday life. In the early 1990s, residents of the serene desert town of Taos, New Mexico, began reporting a strange and persistent sound. It was not a loud noise, but a low-frequency hum, like a distant diesel engine idling forever just over the horizon. This was the birth of the Taos hum, an auditory ghost that has never been silenced. The most baffling aspect is that this sound is not heard by everyone. Only a small percentage of the population, often estimated at around 2%, can perceive it. For these hearers, the hum is a constant, inescapable presence. It is often more pronounced indoors and at night, transforming their homes from places of peace into chambers of endless, low-grade torment. The relentless drone makes concentration difficult, disrupts sleep, and has been linked to chronic stress, headaches, and a deep sense of isolation for those who suffer its effects. The quest to find the source has been long and fruitless. Teams of investigators from universities and government agencies have descended upon Taos, armed with sophisticated sound detection equipment. They have searched for the hum in the hum of industrial machinery, the rumble of distant freight trains, and the secret operations of military communication systems using extremely low-frequency waves. Others have looked to the Earth itself, proposing that the hum could be generated by microseismic activity, the subtle, constant shifting of tectonic plates deep below the desert. Every logical lead has turned into a dead end. No man-made or geological source has ever been identified that matches the specific, elusive quality of the Taos hum. This vacuum of explanation has given rise to more extraordinary ideas. Some scientists suggest it is a form of mass tinnitus, a neurological condition where the brain generates sound in the absence of an external stimulus. But why would it manifest so specifically in certain locations and for a select group of people? Others whisper about clandestine government projects, perhaps psychological warfare tests or energy weapons operating at a frequency only some can detect. More spiritual theories propose the hum is a global auditory phenomenon, a vibrational frequency of the Earth itself, heard only by those with a certain psychic or spiritual sensitivity. For the hearers, the debate offers little comfort. They are left with a reality that is both deeply personal and utterly unexplained, a private hell that others cannot perceive and science cannot name. The Taos hum forces us to confront the very nature of perception itself. Is the sound out there in the world, or is it born within the mind of the listener? It is a reminder that some of the most profound mysteries are not things we can see, but things we can only hear, a ghost in the machine of our own reality. The silence of the Taos hum is a private torment, but the legend of the Philadelphia experiment screams with the chaos of public spectacle. In October of 1943, at the height of the Second World War, the United States Navy was said to have performed a miracle of physics. According to the story, the destroyer escort USS Eldridge was outfitted with powerful electromagnetic generators. Their purpose was not to power weapons, but to bend light and space itself. The generators were activated in the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard, and the impossible happened. The 500-foot-long warship, along with its entire crew, was enveloped in a green, glowing fog and vanished completely from sight, rendered perfectly invisible. But the story did not end there. The ship was then said to have been teleported in an instant, reappearing hundreds of miles away in the harbor at Norfolk, Virginia, before blinking back to its original location in Philadelphia. The technological triumph, however, came at a horrific human cost. The crew members were the experiment's true casualties. Sailors were reportedly found fused into the metal structure of the ship itself, their bodies merged with the steel decks and bulkheads in a state of living death. Others suffered catastrophic mental breakdowns, some bursting into flames in front of their shipmates, while still others would simply fade in and out of visibility, becoming walking ghosts trapped between dimensions. This terrifying narrative first entered public consciousness not through official channels, but from a single, mysterious source. In the 1950s, a man named Carl Meredith Allen, who used the pseudonym Carlos Allende, began sending a series of rambling letters to an astronomer and author named Morris K. Jessup. Allen claimed to have witnessed the event from a nearby merchant ship, providing vivid, disturbing details that would become the bedrock of the entire legend. The United States Navy has always maintained a firm and simple denial. They state that the USS Eldridge was never in Philadelphia on the alleged date, and that the entire story is a complete fabrication with no basis in fact. Official deck logs and movement orders seem to support this, placing the ship elsewhere. So how did such a detailed and persistent myth take root? Many researchers point to a case of mistaken identity and misunderstood technology. During the war, the Navy was actively working on a process called degaussing. This involved wrapping a ship's hull with electrical cables to create a magnetic field that would neutralize the vessel's own magnetic signature, making it invisible to enemy magnetic mines. To an observer with little technical knowledge, the sight of a ship being fitted with strange coils and generating powerful electromagnetic fields could easily be misinterpreted as something far more fantastical. Other theories suggest the story was a deliberate hoax, perhaps concocted by Allen himself, or that it was a distorted echo of real, classified research into radar invisibility, a precursor to modern stealth technology. The legend's enduring power lies in its potent blend of ingredients. It combines the secrecy of a world at war, the awe of emerging scientific power, and a chilling cautionary tale about the human price of playing God. It asks a deeply unsettling question. If a government could achieve such a monumental breakthrough, would we ever be told the truth, or would the witnesses simply be written off as madmen fused to the walls of a story no one is allowed to believe? A different kind of silence fell over a remote Bavarian farmstead in the spring of 1922, a silence born not of emptiness but of a profound and violent mystery. The Gruber family lived a simple, isolated life at Hinterkaifeck, a cluster of buildings so far from the nearest village that the outside world felt like a distant rumor. In the days leading up to the tragedy, the family's normal routine was pierced by unsettling signs. The daughter, Victoria, reported hearing footsteps in the attic when no one should have been up there. A neighbor mentioned seeing strange tracks in the snow, leading from the edge of the forest toward the farmhouse, but none leading away. Most ominously, the family patriarch, Andreas Gruber, found a newspaper on the property that none of them had bought, a silent, anonymous token left by an unseen visitor. These eerie premonitions culminated on the night of March 31st. The 6 inhabitants of the farm, from the elderly Andreas and his wife Kazilia to their young granddaughter Kazilia, were lured one by one into the barn. There, each was savagely murdered with a mattock, a farming tool similar to a pickaxe. The killer's efficiency was absolute, and the brutality was staggering. The horror, however, did not end with the murders. For several days afterward, someone remained at the farm. Neighbors noticed smoke curl from the chimney. The livestock in the stable were fed and cared for, Someone was living among the dead, maintaining a grotesque facade of normalcy as the bodies lay cold in the barn. This detail is perhaps the most chilling aspect of the entire case, suggesting a perpetrator of unnerving calm, someone who felt at home in the aftermath of their own carnage. The crime was discovered days later when a few brave neighbors finally decided to investigate the unusual quiet. What they found prompted one of the largest criminal investigations in German history, involving hundreds of suspects and countless hours of police work. Yet it all led to a dead end. There was no clear motive, no valuables were stolen. There were no signs of a struggle or a forced entry, implying the victims may have known and trusted their killer. The investigation explored a wide range of suspects. A former farmhand who had been let go after a dispute was a prime candidate. A passing vagrant was considered, though the careful, prolonged activity after the murders seemed to contradict a random act. Some even pointed to Victoria's deceased husband, suggesting he may have faked his own death in the war and returned for a twisted revenge. When logical explanations failed, more outlandish theories emerged. Locals whispered about a family curse or a demonic entity from the surrounding woods, a supernatural predator drawn to the isolation of the farm. The official investigation was ultimately closed without an arrest. The frustration and lingering fear were so potent that the authorities made a final, decisive act. They tore the farm buildings down completely, erasing Hinterkaifeck from the map as if to bury the memory itself. But some memories refused to stay buried. The case remains officially unsolved, a perfect, frozen moment of rural terror. It stands as a stark reminder that the most profound mysteries are not always about ancient curses or celestial explosions, but about the darkness that can walk, unseen and unhurried, right up to our own door. A stark red pen circle on a computer printout marks one of the most tantalizing moments in the human search for cosmic company. In the summer of 1977, astronomer Jerry R. Amon was volunteering for the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence project, sifting through vast streams of radio data from the Big Ear telescope in Ohio. The work was monotonous, a slow scan of the sky for any pattern that stood out from the universal static. Then, on August 15th, he saw it, a vertical column of data representing a signal so powerful and so strange that it defied any easy explanation. It was a narrowband radio burst, precisely the type of signature scientists predicted an advanced civilization might use for an interstellar beacon. This wasn't a faint whisper. It was a shout 30 times louder than the background noise of deep space, and it lasted for a full 72 seconds, the exact duration the Big Ear telescope was fixed on that particular point in the sky. Amon was so stunned by the discovery that he grabbed his red pen and scrawled a single, powerful word in the margin. Wow, that exclamation of pure astonishment gave the signal its immortal name. The euphoria was short-lived. The very characteristic that made the wow signal so compelling was its fleeting nature. Astronomers immediately pointed every available instrument back toward that same patch of space near the constellation Sagittarius. They listened for days, then weeks, then years. They scanned that frequency again and again. The silence that answered them was absolute, the signal never repeated. This one and done nature is the core of the mystery. If it was a deliberate broadcast from another star, why was it only sent once? Scientists have worked for decades to find a natural explanation. Some suggested it could have been a signal reflected off a piece of space debris, like a discarded satellite casing. Others proposed it was emission from a passing comet, though the specific comets suggested were not in that region of the sky at the time. Each proposed solution has faced significant challenges, failing to fully account for the signal's unique power and precise characteristics. The wow signal endures not because it proves anything, but because it represents a perfect question. It was everything researchers were hoping to find, a needle of impossible perfection in a cosmic haystack. It is a ghost that visited us just once, a voice that said hello and then vanished before we could even think to reply. That single, unverified event continues to fuel our deepest wonder, a quiet promise that somewhere in the immense dark we might not be alone after all. One winter morning in 1855, the people of South Devon, England, awoke to an impossible sight. Overnight, a light snowfall had blanketed the countryside, and etched into its pristine surface was a trail of footprints stretching for over 100 miles. These were no ordinary tracks. Each mark was a perfect cloven hoofprint, as if made by a powerful bipedal creature. The sheer scale of the trail was staggering, but its path was truly inexplicable. The footprints marched in a single, unwavering line across open fields, through walled gardens, and over the rooftops of houses. They appeared on both sides of impassable, high walls without any sign of the creature climbing. They went straight up to the sides of houses, continued over the thatched roofs, and descended the other side to resume their march. Most baffling of all, witnesses reported the tracks entering and exiting narrow drain pipes, as if the entity could compress its form to pass through solid obstacles. Panic spread like wildfire through the villages. The local clergy declared the marks to be the work of Satan himself, and many residents barricaded their doors, terrified that the devil had walked among them. The story became a national sensation when it was reported in the Times of London, lending it a credibility that transcended rural folklore. The authorities were under immense pressure to provide an answer, but every theory they proposed fell short. Some suggested an escaped kangaroo from a private menagerie was responsible, but the two-footed hopping gait of a kangaroo would not produce a single, continuous line of prints. Others blamed more common animals like badgers or otters, whose tracks might have melted and distorted into a hoof-like shape, but this could not explain the vast distance, the rooftop paths, or the unerring straight line of the trail. A more inventive theory posited that an experimental hot air balloon, trailing a broken shackle or rope, had bounced along the ground for miles, creating the marks, yet this failed to account for the precision and consistency of the prints, or their appearance in such confined spaces. The event endures in folklore because it represents a perfect storm of mystery. It was a physical, tangible phenomenon witnessed by hundreds, documented by the press, and yet it defied every logical explanation the Victorian era could muster. Modern theorists have revisited the case with new ideas. Some scientists have proposed the prints were caused by a rare atmospheric phenomenon, such as a plasma vortex or a ball lightning event that scorched the snow in a distinct pattern. Others maintain it was an elaborate, coordinated hoax, though the logistics of creating such a vast and intricate trail on a single winter night, without leaving human footprints behind, seem nearly as impossible as the supernatural explanation itself. The devil's footprints force us to confront a simple, unsettling fact. Sometimes the most enduring mysteries are not grand curses or spectral visions, but something as mundane as a set of tracks in the snow, a trail that leads everywhere and nowhere at once, leaving only questions frozen in time. Two electronic technicians ventured into the hills of Rio de Janeiro one afternoon in August 1966, never to return alive. Their bodies were discovered on a hilltop in the Vintum district, posed in a scene of deliberate and inexplicable strangeness. Miguel José Viana and Manuel Pereira da Cruz were both dressed in formal suits and impermeable coats. Most chillingly, each man wore a lead mask over his face, carefully crafted to cover the eyes and nose. There was no sign of violence, no struggle, and no visible cause of death. Scattered around them were the artifacts of a cryptic ritual. A small notebook contained mysterious instructions, mentioning things like lights and capsules to be taken at certain times. An empty bottle of water and a towel lay nearby, completing this surreal tableau. The investigation revealed that the two men, who worked in the electronics field, had purchased the lead plates just days before their outing and had personally fashioned them into masks. They told the sales clerk they were for an experiment, a protection against radiation. but what kind of experiment ends with its participants dead on a remote hilltop? The official autopsy could only list the cause of death as unknown, and toxicology reports found no traces of common poisons or drugs. This vacuum of facts has given rise to a spectrum of theories, each more puzzling than the last. The most grounded suggestion is that they were conducting a dangerous high-voltage experiment, perhaps trying to harness atmospheric electricity, and the lead masks were a misguided attempt at insulation against electromagnetic fields. Another theory points to a psychological experiment, speculating they were ingesting powerful hallucinogenic drugs to induce an out-of-body experience, using the masks to block out sensory input and focus their mind. The most compelling and most debated theory connects them to a spiritualist group. In 1960s Brazil, esoteric beliefs were common, and some groups were fascinated by the idea of contacting extraterrestrials or crossing into other dimensions. The lead masks in this context could have been seen as a shield against powerful spiritual energies or interdimensional radiation. The cryptic notes might have been instructions from a medium or a guidebook for achieving cosmic consciousness, a journey from which they never returned. Were they waiting for a UFO to pick them up? Did they believe they could project their consciousness into another realm, leaving their physical bodies behind? The lead masks case offers no answers, only the haunting image of two men who prepared for something extraordinary, and then met an end so quiet and so strange that it defies all logic to this day. 9 experienced Russian hikers embarked on a winter trek through the Ural Mountains in 1959, a journey that would end on the bleak slope of Kholat-Syakh, the Mountain of the Dead. When a search party finally located their camp weeks later, they uncovered a scene of profound and chilling disorder. The tent was slashed open from the inside, as if the occupants had desperately cut their way out. The hikers' bodies were discovered scattered across the snowy landscape, some dressed in nothing but their underwear despite the sub-zero temperatures. There were no signs of a struggle, but the injuries told a horrifying story. One victim had a completely fractured skull, while others suffered massive internal trauma, their ribs crushed by an immense focused force, yet their external skin showed no marks. The official Soviet investigation closed the case, cryptically attributing the deaths to a compelling natural force, a phrase that explained nothing and invited endless speculation. Why would a team of skilled mountaineers in the peak of health frantically flee the safety of their tent into a deadly blizzard without even stopping to put on their boots? One prominent theory suggests a rare slab avalanche could have triggered a panicked escape, and the strange injuries were caused by the heavy, compacted snow. Yet, avalanche experts point out the slope was not steep enough for a major slide, and no evidence of one was found. Another idea points to infrasound, low-frequency sound waves generated by the wind that can induce feelings of terror and irrational panic, potentially causing the group to flee in a shared hysterical state. More speculative theories involve secret military testing, perhaps a sonic weapon or an experimental parachute mine that caused the internal injuries and drove the hikers mad with fear. Some have even looked to the local indigenous Mansi people or a mythical Yeti, though no tracks or evidence supported an attack. The Dyatlov Pass incident remains a cold case that chills the blood because it presents a logical paradox. These were rational, trained individuals who chose the most irrational action imaginable, fleeing into certain death from an unseen, unknown threat. What terrifying force, natural or otherwise, could provoke such a complete and fatal surrender of survival instinct? Los Angeles in 1947 was a city of dreams and dark secrets, a place where glamour and grit existed side by side. On a January morning in a vacant lot, a scene was discovered that would forever scar the public imagination. A young woman named Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress who would become known to history as the Black Dahlia, was found brutally murdered. Her body had been severed cleanly in half at the waist and was posed with a horrifying deliberateness in the grass. Her face was carved into a grotesque, permanent smile from ear to ear. The sheer brutality of the act, combined with the theatrical posing of the remains, suggested a killer of profound sadism and chilling calculation. The Los Angeles Police Department launched one of the most extensive manhunts in the city's history. Yet, instead of a clear path to the killer, they were inundated with a flood of false confessions. Over 200 people came forward claiming responsibility, each one needing to be investigated and dismissed, muddying the waters and wasting precious time and resources. The investigation circled a gallery of potential suspects, from a lone, deranged individual to theories involving a network of powerful, untouchable men. Some investigators believed the killer had surgical skill, given the precision of the bisection. Others saw the murder as the work of a deeply disturbed mind with no medical training at all. While this is fundamentally a horrific criminal case, the very nature of the crime has fueled decades of paranormal speculation. The killer's ritualistic behavior, the posing of the body, and the lack of any clear motive have led some to theorize about occult connections, a dark ceremony performed under the Hollywood stars. The enduring mystery has spawned countless books, films, and theories, transforming a real woman's tragic death into a dark American legend. The Black Dahlia murder continues to fascinate and horrify because it represents an absolute void of answers. It is a stark reminder that some darkness is so complete, so meticulously crafted, that it defies all understanding, leaving only a chilling silhouette against the bright lights of the city. A polished sphere of steel sat quietly in the charred undergrowth of a Florida island, waiting for a family to stumble upon its silent, gleaming surface. In March 1974, the Betts family was surveying the damage of a brush fire on their Fort George Island property when 21-year-old Terry Betts found it. It was perfectly smooth, remarkably heavy for its size, and seemed to be made of a single piece of stainless steel. They took it home as a curious souvenir, a strange metallic ball to adorn their mantelpiece. For 2 weeks, it did nothing at all. Then the sphere began to reveal its bizarre personality. It started with a low, resonant humming sound like a tuning fork struck in another room. Then came the movement. The family claimed the sphere would, on its own, begin to roll across the floor, change direction to avoid furniture, and even seemed to push back with resistance when they tried to force it to move. At one point, Terry was playing his guitar in the same room, and the sphere reportedly responded to the chords, emitting a throbbing vibration that seemed to answer the music. The family was convinced they were not just observing a physical anomaly, but interacting with something intelligent. The story, once it leaked out, became a national media sensation. Reporters and television crews descended on the Betts' home, all hoping to capture footage of the mysterious, self-propelled orb. Scientists from the US Navy and NASA were said to have examined it. The official reports, however, were deeply unsatisfying for those hoping for an alien artifact. The sphere was hollow, and while it was made of ferrous steel, it was not magnetic. The Navy reportedly concluded it was not an explosive device, but they could not determine its precise origin or explain the strange behaviors the family described. So what was this enigmatic object? The most compelling and likely explanation is also the most mundane. The sphere was almost certainly a type of industrial ball check valve, the kind used in high-pressure hydraulic systems, perhaps from a satellite or a piece of military equipment. These spheres are manufactured to be perfectly balanced and incredibly durable. How then do we explain its alleged antics? Skeptics propose that the sphere's seemingly intelligent movements were a combination of subtle environmental factors and psychological suggestion. The Betts' home was an old building with uneven floors. A perfectly balanced, heavy metal sphere placed on a slight incline could easily appear to roll on its own, its path altered by the subtlest vibrations from footsteps or even passing trucks. Once the family believed the object was possessed of a strange power, every minor vibration and coincidental movement was interpreted as proof of its sentience. Yet, the legend of the Bet sphere endures precisely because it sits at that tantalizing intersection of the ordinary and the extraordinary. It was a real, physical object that behaved in ways that defied easy logic for those who witnessed it. It represents that powerful human desire to find magic in the mundane, to believe that a simple, polished sphere from a burned forest could be a messenger from the stars, or a fragment of technology so advanced it seems like magic. A Christmas Eve fire should have been a story of a family's narrow escape, but for George and Jenny Sodder of West Virginia, it was the beginning of a nightmare that would last a lifetime. On December 24, 1945, a blaze erupted in their home while they and 4 of their 9 children slept. In the frantic escape, George and Jenny and 4 children made it out alive. But 5 of their children, ranging in age from 5 to 14, were left behind in the inferno and were never seen again. The official ruling was a tragic accident, an electrical fire that claimed the young lives. The Sodders, however, refused to believe their children had perished. The very circumstances of that night pointed to something far more sinister. In the hours before the fire, their telephone line had been cut. The family's truck parked outside refused to start, its ignition system tampered with. Most critically, the ladder they always kept propped against the house for a quick second-story escape was missing, as if someone had deliberately trapped the children upstairs. The fire itself behaved strangely, burning with an intense, localized heat that reduced the home to fine ash yet left surrounding trees and shrubs untouched, a characteristic that fueled speculation about an accelerant like gasoline. When authorities sifted through the wreckage, they found no trace of bone or teeth from the 5 missing children. A state police official insisted the fierce heat would have cremated the remains, but a local funeral director publicly stated that a fire of that nature, even at its most intense, would have left behind some identifiable skeletal fragments. This complete absence of physical evidence cemented the family's conviction that their children had not died, but had been taken. George Sodder was an outspoken Italian immigrant with strong anti-fascist views, and he believed his criticism of Mussolini may have made him a target. He pursued every lead, from a witness who claimed to see the children peering from a passing car that same night, to a later photograph mailed anonymously showing a young man who bore a striking resemblance to his missing son, Louis. The caption on the back read, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie, ill boys, a B12. The message was cryptic and heartbreaking, but despite hiring private investigators, the trail always went cold. For the rest of their lives, George and Jenny Sodder maintained a billboard near their property pleading for information, a public testament to a private agony that never faded. The mystery of the Sodder children endures because it is a story of 2 irreconcilable truths. The official record states a tragic accident, while a family's unwavering belief points to a calculated kidnapping. It forces us to ask whether a parent's intuition is a powerful guide to the truth or the most profound form of grief, a hope that refuses to be extinguished even by fire. Far to the north, on the most remote and wind-swept edge of the Scottish Hebrides, a lighthouse stood silent and dark. In December 1900, a relief keeper named Joseph Moore was rowed to the rocky shore of Eilean Moor. He climbed the steep path to the Flannan Isles lighthouse expecting a routine handover, but he found only an unsettling vacuum. The main gate and the heavy door to the lighthouse itself were both closed but unlocked. Inside, the living quarters were in perfect, almost obsessive order. 2 of the 3 oilskins were missing from their hooks, but the 3rd remained, suggesting one man had stayed behind. A cold meal of meat and pickles was set out on the table. Most hauntingly, the clocks in the building had all stopped, as if time itself had frozen within those walls. The 3 experienced keepers, Thomas Marshall, James Jucat, and Donald MacArthur, were gone without a trace. The lighthouse logbook offered a few cryptic clues. Entries described days of brutal weather with hurricane-force winds that the head keeper, James Ducat, had reportedly been nervous about. One entry, attributed to Thomas Marshall, noted that the storm was so severe the other two men were praying, a behavior considered unusual for these seasoned, stoic mariners. The final log entry was mundane, recording routine maintenance completed, and then nothing. An official investigation could only conclude that the men had been swept off the rocky ledge by an enormous freak wave while attempting to secure equipment. Yet this theory felt incomplete. Why would all three experienced men be outside in such dangerous conditions? If one was washed away, would the other two not have retreated to safety and logged the tragedy? The complete absence of bodies and the strange domestic scene fueled wilder speculation for decades. Some whispered of a fight that turned fatal, a murder-suicide pact in the crushing isolation. Others, tapping into older local legends, spoke of sea monsters rising from the deep to claim the men. In the 20th century, theories of alien abduction found a foothold in the sheer impossibility of the event. The most enduring power of the Flannan Isles mystery, however, lies not in these fanciful ideas but in its stark, quiet details. The set meal, the stopped clocks, the single remaining coat, these are the elements of a story interrupted mid-sentence. It is a portrait of three lives that simply vanished into the Atlantic mist, leaving behind a perfectly ordered world to mark their passage from it. A simple piece of linen cloth holds one of the most scrutinized images in human history. The Shroud of Turin appears to bear the faint front and back imprint of a crucified man, complete with wounds that match the biblical accounts of the torture and death of Jesus Christ. The history of the shroud is a tapestry woven from faith, mystery, and controversy. It emerged clearly into the historical record in the 1300s in Liéry, France, though some accounts suggest it existed long before that. From the moment it was displayed, it became an object of intense veneration, a physical relic that seemed to offer a direct, tangible connection to the central event of the Christian faith. For centuries, pilgrims traveled to see it, believing they were looking upon the actual burial cloth of Christ. The image itself is hauntingly subtle. It is not painted with any known pigment. Instead, it resides only on the very topmost fibers of the linen, resembling a faint, straw-colored scorch mark. The figure bears the marks of a crown of thorns, a wound in the side, and lash marks across the back, a portrait of suffering that feels unnervingly specific. The modern battle over the shroud's authenticity erupted in the 1980s. In a landmark study, scientists were permitted to perform radiocarbon dating on a small sample of the cloth. The results, announced in 1988, sent shockwaves through the world. The tests dated the linen to between 1260 and 1390, squarely within the medieval period. To many, this was definitive proof that the shroud was an elaborate forgery, a masterful creation designed to deceive the faithful of the Middle Ages. Yet the story did not end there. Almost immediately, questions were raised about the carbon dating. Critics argued that the sample taken came from a corner of the shroud that had been handled and mended over the centuries, potentially contaminated by carbon from later centuries, such as smoke from a fire it survived in 1532. This contamination, they argued, would make the cloth appear much younger than it truly is. The debate over the carbon dating continues to this day, a scientific stalemate that has never been fully resolved. But the mystery only deepens when you examine the image itself. Scientific analysis in the 1970s revealed something astonishing. The shroud's image contains encoded three-dimensional information. When a special analyzer was used to translate the varying intensities of the image into depth, it produced a perfectly coherent three-dimensional sculpture of a human body, something no ordinary painting or drawing could possibly achieve. How was this effect created? No one has been able to reproduce it using the materials and knowledge available in the medieval period. The image seems to be the result of a rapid, superficial dehydration and oxidation of the linen fibers, a process akin to a very subtle scorching, but one that required no direct contact with a heat source. So how was it made? Believers point to the possibility of a miraculous burst of energy at the moment of resurrection, a divine flash of light that left behind this photographic negative in human flesh and blood. Skeptics propose an incredibly ingenious yet unknown medieval artist who somehow used a primitive form of photography or a chemical technique involving vapors to create the image. Both sides agree on one thing: the method of its creation remains completely unexplained by modern science. This is the enduring power of the Shroud of Turin. It exists in the liminal space between faith and reason. For the faithful, it is a sacred icon, its spiritual truth transcending any scientific finding. For the scientifically minded, it is a fascinating and unsolved historical puzzle, a cold case from the Middle Ages. It forces a confrontation between two very different ways of knowing, leaving us with a profound question. Is it the ultimate holy relic, or is it the most brilliant and baffling forgery the world has ever seen? While the Flannan Isles lighthouse was haunted by absence, a vast stretch of ocean has become legendary for its disappearances. The Bermuda Triangle, a loosely defined region in the western North Atlantic, is a name that instantly conjures images of vessels and planes vanishing into thin air. The legend was cemented by a series of high-profile cases that seem to defy all logic. In December 1945, 5 United States Navy Avenger torpedo bombers, known as Flight 19, took off from Fort Lauderdale on a routine training mission. The flight leader, an experienced instructor, was heard over the radio becoming increasingly disoriented, reporting that his compasses were not working and that everything looked wrong. He stated they could not be sure of any direction, even the ocean did not look as it should. The 5 planes with 14 crewmen simply never returned. A massive search and rescue plane, a Martin Mariner, was also lost with its 13-man crew during the operation, adding to the terrible mystery. Another enduring enigma is the USS Cyclops, a massive Navy cargo ship with over 300 people on board. In March 1918, it sailed into the area and vanished without ever sending a distress signal. No wreckage was ever found, and its disappearance remains the single largest non-combat loss of life in United States Navy history. For those who believe in the Triangle's supernatural power, these cases are stark evidence of an invisible, malevolent force. Scientists, however, have spent decades assembling a portfolio of natural explanations that are, in their own way, just as formidable. This part of the ocean is a breeding ground for sudden, violent storms that can appear and vanish with little warning. The powerful Gulf Stream current flows directly through the region, a massive river within the sea that can quickly disperse any evidence of a wreck. Furthermore, the seafloor is known to be rich in methane hydrates. A sudden, large-scale eruption of this trapped gas could, in theory, reduce the density of the water so dramatically that a ship would lose its buoyancy and sink almost instantly. Compass anomalies are also a documented fact here, as the Bermuda Triangle is one of the few places on Earth where true north and magnetic north align, which can cause navigational confusion for the unprepared. Yet the human mind often favors a more dramatic story. The unexplained nature of these losses has given rise to spectacular paranormal theories. Some propose the existence of an electronic fog, a strange meteorological phenomenon that scrambles instruments and induces a disorienting state of confusion in pilots. Others speculate about temporary time warps or gravitational vortices that pull objects into another dimension. The most enduring myth connects the triangle to the lost continent of Atlantis, suggesting that advanced crystal technology from the sunken civilization lies on the ocean floor, periodically interfering with modern machinery. The fascinating truth is that the Bermuda Triangle as a concept of unique danger is largely a modern invention. It was a name and idea popularized by authors and magazine writers in the 1950s and 60s who compiled a list of disparate incidents and wove them into a single, terrifying narrative. Statistical analysis by organizations like the United States Coast Guard and global insurance agencies consistently shows that the rate of disappearances in the Bermuda Triangle is no higher, percentage-wise, than in any other similarly trafficked part of the ocean. So why does the legend persist with such tenacity? It speaks to a fundamental human need to impose a story onto the random chaos of nature. The vast, deep ocean is the last great unknown on our planet, a place of immense power and mystery. The idea of a specific zone where the normal rules of physics and navigation break down gives a shape and a name to our deepest fear of the deep, transforming impersonal tragedy into a compelling and strangely comforting myth. Deep within the gilded confines of King Tutankhamun's tomb, a different kind of treasure was said to be hidden, a lethal warning for those who dared to trespass. The legend of the mummy's curse did not begin with a dramatic inscription at the tomb's entrance, but it was the power of the press that carved those words into public consciousness. When Lord Carnarvon, the financial backer of Howard Carter's expedition, died mysteriously in Cairo just months after the tomb's opening, newspapers were quick to report a specific curse, a promise that death would come on swift wings to him who disturbed the king's peace. The timing was uncanny and the details were chilling. At the moment of Carnarvon's death, the lights in his English home reportedly flickered and died, and his dog let out a single, sorrowful howl before collapsing dead herself. These stories, whether entirely true or artfully embellished, created an irresistible narrative. The curse seemed to gain momentum with each new tragedy. George J. Good, a wealthy visitor to the tomb, died of pneumonia soon after. Arthur Mace, a key member of Carter's team, succumbed to arsenic poisoning. Richard Bethel, Carter's secretary, was found dead in his bed from an apparent heart attack, and his father, overcome with grief, later leapt to his death from his 7th-floor apartment. To a world captivated by the discovery, it appeared an invisible force was systematically eliminating everyone connected to the desecration of the sacred burial chamber. The legend was a perfect storm of archaeology and sensationalism, feeding a public hungry for stories that blended ancient mystery with modern danger. Yet, standing firmly against this tide of supernatural fear was Howard Carter himself, the man who first breached the sealed doorway. He lived for another 17 years, dying of natural causes at the age of 64, a fact that skeptics highlight as the curse's most significant flaw. Science offers its own compelling explanations for the string of misfortunes. The tomb had been sealed for over 3,000 years, creating a perfect environment for microorganisms to thrive undisturbed. Researchers have theorized that ancient pathogenic bacteria and fungi, such as Aspergillus niger, could have been present in the dust and sealed containers. When inhaled by individuals with weakened immune systems, like the already ailing Lord Carnarvon, these spores could cause severe, even fatal, respiratory infections. Another theory suggests the ancient priests might have been the original bioterrorists, booby-trapping the tomb with organic poisons or toxic molds placed on the artifacts to punish grave robbers. Beyond biology, the sheer power of suggestion cannot be underestimated. In an atmosphere thick with talk of curses, every minor illness or accident could be reinterpreted as a sign of supernatural retribution. The so-called curse was less a magical spell and more a psychological phenomenon, amplified by a media frenzy that knew a good story when it saw one. The legend of King Tut's curse endures not because it provides proof of the paranormal, but because it represents a timeless conflict. It pits our rational, scientific understanding of the world against a deeper, more primal fear that some secrets are meant to stay buried and that the past has a long, unforgiving memory. Our journey through these 25 mysteries reveals a profound truth about the human spirit. From the silent decks of the merry Celeste to the frantic dance plagues of Strasbourg, And from the glowing fog of the Philadelphia experiment to the quiet terror at Hinterkaifeck, these stories are all connected by threads of fear, wonder, and our relentless desire for answers. They show us that we are storytellers at heart, trying to impose meaning on the chaotic and the unexplained. Whether these events were born from scientific anomalies, psychological phenomena, or something beyond our current understanding, their real power lies in their ability to captivate us generation after generation. They remind us that the world is still full of shadows and whispers, of questions that refuse to be silenced by logic alone. So where does this leave you, the curious observer? The greatest tool you possess is a questioning mind. Be a curious skeptic. Dive into these tales for yourself. Weigh the evidence from both believers and scientists and see where your own conclusions lead. The search for truth is a personal adventure. Now we turn the story over to you. Which of these historical puzzles do you find the most compelling, the one that truly makes you wonder? Share your thoughts in the comments below, along with any local legends or ghost stories from your own corner of the world. And if you're ready to explore more of history's greatest unsolved mysteries, be sure to subscribe for our next deep dive into the shadows. The past is waiting to tell you its secrets.